Hello, hello. Do you want to set your nonprofit apart? Well, today I want to talk about how high standards is actually one of the keys to success for every nonprofit organization. I'm Sarah Olivieri, and I have been helping nonprofits run better for over 2 decades. And today I want to share with you some tips about having high standards and how to implement high standards at your organization so that it helps you run better and ultimately make a bigger impact and make this world a better place. So let's dive in. I have 5 tips for you today, 5 tips on how to have high standards that make a high impact at your organization. So first of all, not everybody, when they say they have high standards, means the same thing. So it's super, super important that you define what your standards are. In my work with my clients, in the impact method, which all my clients learn, I like to teach this set of guiding principles. They're kind of like core values, but they're actually a lot more specific because they specifically define the types of behavior that we expect everybody to show when they show up to work, as well as what our clients and our boards, everybody should be following the same kind of code of general behavior. And that code, those guiding principles, define your standards. They define your high standards. So if you want high standards, you need to define them and write them down into a set of guiding principles. Tip number 2, which is super related to number 1, is we need to communicate our expectations, right? So one of the things I love about writing things down is that when we do it, it actually helps us clarify. So by writing down our standards, we can actually get clearer on our standards. That's tip number 1, right? Defining our standards. But writing them down also helps us, gives us a tool for communicating, right? Because we can share this written information. But more than just having that written information available, like in a handbook or on your website, you need to communicate your standards regularly. Share them at staff meetings, review them frequently. In the impact method, we review our guiding principles every 2 months when we go through this process of iterative strategic planning, where we're actually updating our strategy every 2 months. And as part of that process, we're reviewing our standards and confirming that they in fact are clear and are accurate for our organization. So communicating expectations is extremely important. And one of the ways we can communicate our expectations and reinforce our expectations at the same time is celebrating excellence at our organizations. And that's my tip number 3. We want to celebrate whenever somebody exhibits or a group of people exhibits at what excellence looks like at our organization. When you celebrate these moments, you signal to everybody in your organization and outside of your organization how much you value the level of excellence. And this is really important, not just for your internal operations, but for how your community sees you, especially if you serve an underprivileged or a low income population, because so often nonprofits serving vulnerable populations, those vulnerable populations, they want quality too. And they don't want this feeling of like, oh, the free option, the nonprofit option is not as good as the paid option that I can't afford. And when you spread that message, of excellence, and you're defining excellence, when you spread that message of excellence out into the world through celebrations, you are signaling to your clients that they're going to receive excellent care, excellent support, not just okay, bottom of the barrel, free support. And that's going to do some really important things. It's going to bring you more of the right fit folks, but you're actually going to get better results for them, because people who come feeling like they're going to get something excellent are going to value it more, and they're going to utilize your services better, more thoroughly. So celebrating that excellence is actually going to help you, the people you serve or the animals you serve or whoever you serve, get a better result from your services. Isn't that mind-blowing? Okay, so tip number 4, that's 3, 4. Tip number 4 for having high standards and using those standards to make a bigger impact is to avoid complacency. Sometimes, especially in the nonprofit space, we are such heart-driven, passionate, kind people. It can be hard for us to hold people to high standards. We can say, well, it's okay. They had something going on. We're compassionate to the point that it's actually beyond compassion, that we can actually be, I don't want to say negligent. What's the word I'm looking for? We can be complacent. Of course, that's the word I'm looking for. We can be kind of complacent and kind of complicit in letting somebody have lower standards because we're so concerned with other stuff going on for them. So you as a leader, most leaders that I meet in nonprofits actually have really high standards for excellence, but there seems to be a fall off after the leadership level, or at least after the executive director level sometimes, because then we start underpaying people. So when we hire just anybody who'll do the job for that minimum amount of money, that's really not a competitive wage or maybe not a living wage, we're signaling that we don't value excellence in those roles and positions. And it's a form of complacency. It's a form of not holding the bar, right? When we're hiring, not holding the bar when we are encouraging our people. We need to point out when something is not up to our standards and ask people to raise those standards. Now, you need to evaluate yourself. Is it because they don't share those standards? Because they don't care? Did you hire a wrong fit person? Or are they not able to uphold those standards because they don't have enough time? They're overworked because you're understaffed. Or maybe they're not able to uphold those standards because they're under-resourced. They don't have the tools to do that job really well. So I'll tell you a story. I'm known occasionally to do my own plumbing. And when I was younger, I struggled so much because I didn't have the right tools. And fortunately, my dad, who had also done some plumbing when he was younger, loaned me a bunch of the right tools. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I can do plumbing, right? Because so much of plumbing is about having the right tools to do the job. So anyway, back to avoiding complacency. You don't want to be complacent. And that means holding people accountable, but also double checking, like, what's really going on here? Why aren't we up to standards? Okay, tip number 5, our last tip today. Tip number 5 is you need to be continually improving. And the secret to continually improving is having a baked-in process that reminds you to continually improve, right? So actually, we don't want to be continuously improving every second, right? But if we take breaks out of our work to evaluate how we're doing and take the time to think through improvements, that's how we do continuous improvement. Now, with my clients and in the impact method, we do continuous improvement at 3 points. So we do it every 2 months by improving our overall strategy, where we have the chance to change up any part of our organization, our goals, our staffing, clarify those expectations. We see how we have been operating as a whole and where we're going as a whole organization. And we ask ourselves what's working. We study ourselves, and then we make adjustments or changes, improvements on the whole. Then in addition, every 2 weeks, we go in and look at the work we're carrying on, the projects we're doing, and we do a check. How's it going? What's working? What's not working? So it's scheduled in the calendar to improve how we're working, the flow of work getting done every 2 weeks. And then in the between weeks, or even as frequently as every week, we're just checking in with all the staff on what we call an issues meeting, checking for issues, things that have come up, problems that have arisen that either need to be fixed on the spot because they're a roadblock and we now need to do a quick improvement to get through that roadblock, or we're identifying challenges that we're going to need to address in one of those project review meetings every 2 weeks, or even that strategic meeting that we're going to be having every 2 months. So continuous improvement is really a process that you can bake into running your organization, and it doesn't have to be that time consuming, and the results that it has are incredible. So quick recap for all of you, and I'd love to know in the chat, how do high standards shape your organization's impact, your organization's mission? How do having high standards shape what you do in your organization? So recap, step number 1, you've got to define those standards clearly. Step number 2, you need to communicate those expectations around those standards, and you need to do it broadly and frequently in a variety of ways. If you tell people once, they're not going to get it. It has to be a drum that you are constantly beating at your organization. Step number 3 is to celebrate that excellence as you see it happening, to reinforce it for your staff, your team, and the broader community of your organization, the people you serve, your donors, everybody who touches your organization should see you celebrating excellence. Number 4 is to avoid complacency. If you truly believe in those standards, you need to uphold them throughout your organization. If your organization is helping people in poverty, you should not be paying people so little that they need the kinds of services that your organization provides. That is not okay. And finally, you need to bake a process of continuous improvement so that you are always leveling up and counteracting any complacency that might come out in your organization. That's all I have for you today. Again, I am Sarah Olivieri. If you'd like more tips like this in your email inbox, you can go to pivotground.com/sign up, and I would be happy to send you them by email as well.